This conference will now be recorded.
So in this section, we are going to talk about policy tuning and violations. Now that we have built our own policy, there is a requirement that you fine tune it. So during a length of time, HTTP traffic which is passing through your F5 is observed. And then gradually in phases, the policy must be enforced or tuned as per your requirement without breaking the application. So now when we say violation, when you create a security policy is nothing but a set of definitions for classifying security policy. It is nothing but a set of definitions for classifying HTTP traffic as legitimate or illegitimate. So violation is nothing but an event which violates rules established by this security policy. So when ASM receives a request for a web application, it compares the structure and the content of that request to the rules that are defined in the security policy. And if the request does not comply with the security policy, ASM will generate a violation or multiple violations. Again, frequent occurrence of these violations can also be an indication of false positive. And this is the task which administrator has to do to fine tune his policy. So ASM basically categorizes the violations in two different manners. One is your entities violations or your items violations. So when I say entities violation, entities are nothing but the objects and HTTP methods which comprise your web application. A few common examples of the entities would be like file types, URLs, parameters, cookies, headers. And when I say item violation can be like, for example, HTTP protocol checks or evasion detection, evasion techniques, any attack signature which is matching, your data guard feature. So some common examples which I can give you of the violations would be like this, like illegal HTTP status in response. So if you consider the HTTP response, let's say from the application end, the response code which is coming is 500, and this 500 is not allowed in your security policy, then it will trigger a illegal HTTP status. Or It can be like illegal meta character in response. If according to the security policy that meta character is not allowed, then it will trigger this specific violation. Or if your request length itself exceeds the defined buffer size, then it will trigger a violation. With respect to HTTP protocol compliance, you can have violations like, let's say, post request with content length as 0. So even though the method is which is being used in the communication is post, but the content length is still showing as 0, which is again a violation as per the HTTP protocol standards. Or maybe if you are trying to insert a body in GET request, or it could be like no host header in HTTP version 1.1 request. So in HTTP 1.1, as per the protocol standard, it is mandatory to have a host header. Or attacker might be trying a different HTTP version. So you would get a violation as bad HTTP version. Maybe attacker might be trying to use a old version to take advantage of weaknesses in that older version. So all these were related to your HTTP protocol compliance. Then with respect to attack signatures also, you might get different types of violations. With respect to evasion detection, you might get different types of violations. With respect to specific file types, you get violations like if a file type which is being requested is not found in your security policy. So you might get like illegal file type. Or if the data length is not as per the security policy, you might get illegal post data length. With respect to URL, you might get violations like illegal URL or illegal meta character in the URL. Similarly, with respect to parameters, you get violations as illegal parameter or illegal meta character in parameter name or illegal parameter value. It could be anything. So like this, you have tons of security violations defined in your security policy, which as per your requirement, you can enable or disable. So unless these violations are enabled in your security policy, it will not get triggered. So each violation that you find in ASM is given a specific rating. This is nothing but a threat scale, and the rating starts from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 0 to 5. When I say 0, it means that not rated, or equivalent to no violation. If the rating is 1, it is most likely a false positive. But you, as an administrator, have to review that violation in order to take action accordingly. When a violation rating is 2, it looks like a false positive but requires a examination. This means it needs further examination. 4 means it looks like a threat but requires examination. And 5 is definitely a threat. So this violation rating criteria includes how your attack signature, accuracy, and severity are defined. Maybe if the request is coming from a WAN or a LAN IP, there are high chances that a request is probably a threat when the traffic is coming from WAN side. So what all meta characters are included when the request is triggering multiple attack signatures, it is more likely that the rating would be high. So all these violations that get triggered, we can view all the requests and see the status. When we are reviewing the event logs, we will find different options or different icons with respect to the violations, and these would be something like, let's say, this icon, this icon, or just a flag, and on top of this you will get a rating scale as well. All this you can see in the event logs. So this basically means unblocked request. So which means that a security policy is considering that to be blocked, but it has been forcefully unblocked. This means it is a legal request. This means it is a blocked request. This means it is illegal request. And this would mean it is a legal request but triggered a violation. So the difference between this point and this point would be, in this section you will find a rating scale as well. In this section you will not find a rating scale. You will only find as this and 200, just the response code. So now, yes, you have any doubts?
No, I was just acknowledging.
Okay. So let's now go back to our settings application and then trigger some violations. Let me see with respect to my virtual server. Okay, security policy is already applied. So in here, I go to and from within the application, let me in the search field, I'll type script and then click go. Okay, now that I've initiated a specific request, let me go back to F5, and in order to view the logs with respect to this request, I would be going to event logs. So security, event logs, application, request. So this specific request we can find that this has triggered a specific attack signature violation. If you just click on this icon, you can see what is the attack signature which is matching, and if it is not blocked, what is the status of applied blocking settings. The signature is in currently staging mode. So these two attack signatures have matched while processing this specific request. So you can see this details of the specific request. You can see what is the detected keyword and attack signature ID. In here, you can see what is the detected keyword with respect to that signature. What is the signature attack signature ID? If you click on all details, you also have option for the support ID. So ideally, when you are troubleshooting or client is telling that this application is not accessible, he is getting some error code. So usually in a blocked response page, you will get on the GUI itself a specific support ID. So with respect to this support ID, you can use this as a searching criteria to find out user's request is matching with support ID or which specific event logs correspond to the user's request. So in here we can see the decoded request, what client, what ASM has processed, and also the original request. Now let me go back to the original page and refresh this. And let me, in this search string, I will type document dot cookie and then give go. Let me again go back to my event logs. So in this, you have also have an option to filter on the specific violations. So let's say this search magnifying glass you click, and from here you can drop down the security policy, or even based on the virtual server, what is the custom period that you want to check the logs, and what is the defined security policy rating. So let's say I choose this to 2 to 5. So all the violations event logs where the violation rating is between 2 to 5 or greater than 2 will be listed here if I click on apply. So in the event logs, I will be able to see only those requests with the specified violation rating. If I want to see the details of these requests, I just click on one of these icons. So I just click on this, I will be able to see what attack signature it has matched, document.cookie, and what is the signature ID with respect to this. This is clear?
Yes.
So now that we have understood this, let's talk a bit about staging and enforcement. When I say staging, staging is nothing but it is just like a trial period in which you want the application traffic to be processed across the attack signatures but not block it. So anything which is currently in staging allows the ASM to build a list of false positives without actually harming the traffic or user experience. So it is not blocking the user's request even though the request is actually matching an attack signature. So if you want the the request which is matching attack signature to be blocked, then that specific entity or attack signature have to be enforced or removed from staging. Now whenever we talk about the enforcement mode, there are, when you create a security policy, there are two different modes available. One is your transparent mode, and the second is your blocking mode. In transparent mode, the ASM will log the request and it will send it to the web application. Additionally, ASM will also generate a security violation which administrator can review later. So most policies, when you create, initially run in transparent phase to identify or for the ASM to inspect the traffic and build a map around it. So basically all the violations which get triggered whenever when the policy is in transparent mode, administrator can view all those traffic, inspect it, see whether it is valid or not, and then proceed further accordingly. In the previous session, the policy which we created, which used a rapid deployment template, start this specific policy start out in transparent mode. And when you say the policy is in blocking mode, which means that the ASM will still log the request and a security violation will be generated. and it will also block that specific request if it is matching any attack signature or any security violation. The policies that we create using fundamental or comprehensive templates will be by default in blocking mode. Whenever you create a policy, you can go ahead and change it at a later point of time from transparent to blocking, from blocking to transparent. And then we have term called as enforcement readiness period. By default, this is 7 days. So the purpose of this staging is to identify if the request is matching a specific stage entity.
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so this enforcement readiness period is just the trial period in which the ASM will be inspecting any traffic application which is flowing through the ASM and will try to understand what are the various components of the application. And each time a configuration change is done, this period is reset again to 0. So again, from that day, from that moment on, 7 days will be considered as the enforcement readiness period. After this, you can change the policy from transparent mode to blocking mode. Now, one of the important aspects of ASM is learning the application components. ASM uses this learning process to adapt to a security policy and ensure that there are no false positive violations. It gives all the suggestions with respect to your application components, and then that you can take it as a input and take your actions according to that. So whenever we talk about learning, there are two different ways in which ASM learns the different entities of the application. So while creating the policy, if you choose the learning mode as automatic or manual. So rapid would be using manual method, automatic would be in fundamental and comprehensive. So in case of automatic, ASM automatically modifies all the security policy, or in fact, considering one security policy, it will, whatever traffic it is inspecting, it will give a suggestion and automatically add the components in your security policy. You don't have you don't have to intervene manually, but if you want, you can definitely change that those settings. So whenever ASM inspects a traffic, it gives you a learning suggestion.
Um,
And yeah,
Vinit,
yes.
when we are saying that the ASM will automatically impose some security policies in the automatic the in the rapid deployment mode. Okay,
Mm, mm.
how we will get to know, like maybe something like recently have
So
been
for, for
blocked.
exa- so for example, let's say you have a parameter option. Okay, in your security policy, you have a parameter, and wherein at present by default only you will see asterisk as a parameter. You initiated some request to the application 0f5 and it goes to the server. Okay, so you accessed maybe a specific URL which has the payment parameter. So ASM received this specific request and understood that your application has a component wherein there is a parameter called as payment. And with respect to parameters, if you have set the specific settings in such a way that ASM need to learn all parameters which are part of your application, then what ASM will do is ASM will go to this parameter list and add one more parameter called as payment. And if you are talking about understanding when this was added, you can view from the event from the audit logs.
Okay.
So there will always be a whenever there is a change with the security policy, there are older instances of the security policies also available.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So in case of manual method, there are if you basically choose automatic method only when there are almost hundreds or thousands of security policies, and you being only one administrator, you cannot sit whole day and go through each and every application and have those components added to the security policy. So it is, if for you as administrator it is difficult, then you go to manage all the security policies, then you go for automatic method. Or if your application is quite complex, there are various components available, maybe thousands of URIs, thousands of parameters, you cannot go ahead and add each manually. So in those scenarios, you can just keep your learning mode as automatic. Now when a learning suggestion, so let's say in this specific case parameter came in, F5 received this and F5 gave ASM gave a learning suggestion to you as an administrator. This learning suggestion will be given. In this learning suggestion, there are different options or actions which are available. So what action do you want to take? You can accept the suggestion, you can delete the suggestion, or you can ignore the suggestion. So in case of when you say accept suggestion, what this does is each suggestion will have a specific action defined. So that action will be implemented on your security policy. So for example, you have a suggestion and in that it is mentioned as action as add to parameter list. So when you click on that specific suggestion and you click, there are the three options available, like accept, delete, and ignore. So if you click on accept suggestion, ASM will take the action which is defined in this tab. And when you click on delete suggestion, ASM removes this suggestion from your learning screen. And this same suggestion will reappear if the request is triggered again. Or you can choose this as ignore suggestion. So in case of ignore suggestion, the suggestion will not appear again on your learning screen, even if the violation is triggered again. So main use case of this ignore feature is, when your security policy is already completely built, you still don't want all the different learning suggestions again and again. So you can just select the suggestion and add it to your ignore list. Now, with respect to each request triggering a learning suggestion or a violation, or maybe getting that request to blocked, there are certain flags which are available in the security policy which you can configure. These flags are the learn flag, alarm flag, and your block flag. When the learn flag is selected and for any specific violation, so in the blocking settings, learning and blocking settings of your security policy, these flags would be available across various violations. So for let's consider for one specific violation, let's say violation 1. For this specific violation, if your learn flag is selected, so it would be something like this. Say learn, alarm, and block. So with respect to this violation, all these three settings would be available. If your learn flag is selected and a request is triggering the violation, so ASM generates a learning suggestion for you. In the traffic learning page, it will generate a learning suggestion with respect to that request that it has triggered a violation. So this is the action that you need to take. And what is the matched, let's say, signature? That signature is, let's say, ABC, and action is maybe disable the signature or something. So for ASM to give you a learning suggestion, it is mandatory or important that this flag is set up. It has to be enabled. So with respect to when you create different security policies, different flags might be enabled. So you also as an administrator can enable or disable these various settings in your security policy. And when you choose the alarm flag, you click this. When this is selected for a violation and a request is triggering that violation, ASM basically logs this in the request list. So all the event logs that we find, right? So event logs, you can find the details of that specific request. So it will log the request details in your event request list file. And this flag is most widely used with this learning suggestion. They're used together. And when with respect to that violation, you also have a block flag enabled. And the security policy is in blocking mode. So for any policy to block the specific request, it is mandatory that the policy has to be in blocking mode, and the violation which is being triggered, for that violation the block flag has to be enabled. So whenever you are troubleshooting, these are two most important criterias which you need to consider: the block flag and your policy blocking mode. The policy mode has to be in blocking. Also, your flag has to be set with block. So there are when you are troubleshooting or implementing any configurations, there would be certain scenarios wherein ideally the request should have been blocked, but it is not getting blocked because the block flag is not enabled. And when the request is blocked, a blocking response page will be displayed on the client screen. You also have an option to, instead of reviewing the learning suggestion, you can just accept the request from the event logs also. So in the event logs, let's say in the left screen, you have a request for, let's say, http search.php. So on the event logs, you will get three options. When you click on this specific request or select this specific request, you will get option as delete request, export request, or accept request. So this accept request tab will accept the action which is actually defined on your learning page. On your traffic learning page, the action which is defined, this action will be accepted in here. So you don't have to go to the learning page and then from there you click on accept. So instead of that, from the event logs itself, if you see that this request is valid or maybe has to be added to the security policy, this has to be, you just click on this accept request. So it takes the action which is defined in your learning suggestion. And when you click on delete request, it removes that request from the event log. Or when you click on export request, it would create a HTML page with the request and all the violation data. So all the request details will get extracted in a file. And whenever you are creating your security policy, as with time, what are the various file types or URLs, parameters, what all have been detected, you can see that in your enforcement readiness summary. So let me just show you a few of these settings. So in here, this is the event logs. If you click on one of the event logs, you will get the option as delete, export, and accept. You can click on accept request from here itself. So this will take the action which is defined in your learning suggestion page. Now, if you click on this icon, it will direct you to the learning suggestion which is corresponding to this event logs, which has triggered a attack signature. So here you will be also able to see What is the action defined? What parameter is being changed? Sorry. And what is the matched attack signature? So from here, you can accept this suggestion, you can delete this suggestion, or you can ignore this suggestion. And in here, if you go to this is your enforcement readiness summary. So you will get the different options. What are the file types? What URLs have been? What is the method which has been set in your security policies? How many have been learned? How many have been enforced? All this you can see it in your this readiness summary. And if you want to see the different file types which have been added or present in your configuration with respect to this summary period, you just click on this icon. So by default, at present, nothing is added. The default one is asterisk. And you can also see a list of attack signatures which are available on your appliance. So you go to security, application security, and attack signatures. So almost around 3000 attack signatures are currently assigned to your security policy. And whether these attack signatures are in staging or not, this you can find out from here. And with respect to the various components of your security policy, if you want to see corresponding to a specific violation, whether my learn or alarm or block flag are set or not, that you can do from security, application security, policy building. So you need to go to learning and blocking settings of your security policy. You just click on this. And from here, you can see the learning mode. This is manual. So you just do a drop down, change it to automatic. And then from here, if let's say you choose parameter. So with respect to parameter, these are the different violation types. So if a illegal parameter is detected, it will not give you a learning suggestion or alarm. A violation will not get logged in the event logs. So if you want that, then this learn and alarm flag has to be set up. And this block is currently not highlighted because your policy is in transparent mode. So if you want to enable the block flag, have this changed to blocking mode. So this was all about the security policy fine tuning. We'll do a lab tomorrow on how do we accept request or viewing the learning suggestions. So for today, we'll wind up here.
Okay. Thank you, Vinny.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.